Lily sat on the edge of her narrow bed, the dim glow of a flickering street lamp casting long shadows across the cracked walls of her small room. Outside, the night was thick with a silence so heavy it pressed against her chest. Yet her mind spun with chaos. She clutched a crumpled photograph, a faded image of her father, smiling beside a woman she'd never seen before. Her fingertips trembled as she traced the edges, her breath catching painfully. "How could I not have known?" she whispered, fiercely, voice trembling, with a mix of betrayal and despair. The discovery had shattered everything she believed about her family. Her father, the man she loved, the hero in her childhood stories, was hiding an entire life she'd never imagined. She remembered the night she uncovered the secret, a hidden folder on his old laptop, tucked away in a forgotten corner of his files. Her eyes had widened as she scrolled through the emails, seeing her father's name intertwined with another woman's. Photographs of children she'd never met, moments frozen in time. Birthday parties, casual smiles. A life she'd been shut out of. Her stomach clenched as her mind replayed the shock. He lied to me, to all of us. She had stormed into the living room, clutching the evidence like a weapon. "Dad, who is she?" Her voice cracked, trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. He looked up, startled, sweat beading on his forehead, voice steady but strained. "Lily, this isn't what you think." But her heart had already closed itself off, suspicion turning into rage. She remembered the piercing gaze she shot him, the way her hands clenched into fists. "You lied about everything," she hissed, voice trembling with tears. That moment marked the beginning of her descent into obsession. She'd started digging deeper, driven by a need to understand the man who had disguised so much. She remembered sneaking into his study late at night, hacking into old emails, reading the words he'd desperately tried to hide. Her pulse quickened as she recalled the confrontation that followed, the sense that her entire world was crumbling. The truth gnawed at her. Her father wasn't just a flawed man. He was a stranger, hiding another family, another life, and perhaps, in her heart, a part of her that had always felt incomplete. And yet, beneath the anger there was a dark seed of resolve blossoming, something unthinkable, something that would alter her fate forever. Her fingers curled around the photograph, knuckles white. "If I find him," she whispered, voice fierce with unspoken vow, "I'll ask him why he lied, and if he tries to deny it again." Her jaw clenched. "I won't let him get away with it." The night pressed on, heavy and suffocating, as Lily's mind raced with a dangerous mix of love, fury, and the icy realization that her life had become a battlefield, one where she would have to choose between forgiveness and justice, between the girl she once was and the person she was about to become. Beneath the flickering glow of a single street lamp, Lily stood motionless, clutching the crumpled photograph of her father's second family. Her breath was shallow, each inhalation sharp and trembling, as if the cold night air could somehow numb her growing chaos. Her mind replayed the scenes from the past few months, her clandestine investigations, the stolen moments spent poring over documents, the clandestine meetings with strangers who claimed to be her half-siblings. Every detail was etched into her memory. Her father's hushed voice on the phone, the hurried glances he cast over his shoulder, attempts to conceal his pain behind a mask of charm. Frustration flickered in her eyes when she remembered the day he finally admitted, in a moment of drunken vulnerability, that he'd kept a secret for years. His other family, his mistake, as he called it. A mistake Lily had never known existed until she uncovered it herself. Her fists clenched the edges of the photograph so tightly that her nails drew blood, and she muttered under her breath, "Why did you lie? Why did you hide this from me?" Her voice cracked, voice thick with betrayal and fury. Then she looked, down at her trembling hands, fighting the rising tide of despair and a newfound, terrifying clarity. If she didn't act, if she let him continue to live in his web of lies, she'd be complicit in the destruction of everyone involved. Her eyes flicked to the darkened sky, streaked with faint stars, and she felt a strange, icy calm settle over her, as if some part of her had already made a decision, one that no longer belonged to the girl she used to be. She took a step forward, her silhouette merging with the shadows, and whispered fiercely, "If I find him, I'll ask him why he betrayed us, and if he tries to deny it again, I won't let him get away with it." The night's silence pressed in around her, thick with secrets and unspoken promises, as her mind spun with a dangerous, unyielding resolve, knowing that her next move could shatter everything, including herself. Lily's breath hitched as she stared at the flickering candlelight casting wavering shadows across her cluttered bedroom wall. Outside, the wind whispered through the crack in her window, carrying the scent of rain and something else. Something metallic, urgent. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the battered letter she had found tucked inside her father's old coat pocket, the ink smudged but still legible. "If you read this, it means I'm gone. I couldn't face what I've done, what I've become. I'm sorry for the pain I caused, especially to you, Lily." Her eyes widened, tears pooling as a bitter taste flooded her throat. She remembered the night she had followed him to that secluded cabin, the one he always avoided talking about. Her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. When she'd finally seen him through the window, her father was there, arms around another woman, their laughter rolling out like thunder. The memory sliced through her, raw and jagged. She'd confronted him later, voice trembling. "Why did you lie? Why did you hide this from me?" Her voice cracked, betrayal curling in her words. He had looked away, eyes clouded with shame, and muttered something about protecting her, about the shame that would ruin everything. But she knew better now. The secret had been poison, slowly rotting her family from within. That night, her mind spiraled into chaos, her fists clenched, her voice a fierce whisper. "If I find him, I'll ask him why he betrayed us. And if he tries to deny it again, I won't let him get away with it." The candle's flame trembled, as if mirroring her trembling resolve, and she felt a strange, icy calm settle deep inside her, an almost unnatural clarity that she hadn't known she possessed. Her eyes flashed with fierce determination, and she stepped forward, the shadows swallowing her silhouette as she whispered into the dark. "Tonight, I will face the truth, no matter what it costs. I won't be deceived again." Every nerve in her body buzzed with anticipation and dread, knowing that once she crossed this line, her life would never be the same. The rain began to patter softly against the window pane, a melancholy symphony echoing her turbulent heart, as Lily prepared herself for the moment of reckoning, ready to confront the demons lurking in her past, whatever the consequence might be. The house was eerily silent as Lily slipped through the dimly lit hallway, her footsteps muffled on the plush carpet stained with dust and memories. Shadows clung to the corners like ghosts, whispering secrets she had longed to uncover but now feared confronting. Her breath hitched when she reached the study, a room filled with the scent of aged paper and unspoken regrets. The door was slightly ajar, revealing her father's silhouette hunched over the cluttered desk, illuminated by a flickering desk lamp that cast his features into stark relief. Her pulse hammered against her ribs as she hesitated, then pushed the door open with trembling hands. "Dad," she whispered, voice cracking. He spun around swiftly, his face a mask of surprise and guilt, eyes darting to the hidden folders on his desk. "Lily, what are you doing here?" His voice was strained, brittle with years of secrets choking his words. She stepped inside, her fists clenched tightly. "I found your emails, the ones you tried so hard to hide." Her voice was raw with fury, trembling with the weight of betrayal. "You had another family, another life you kept from us. How could you lie for so long?" Her words sliced through the room like a blade, and for a moment, silence reigned, a tense, suffocating silence broken only by her ragged breathing and the distant hum of the rain. His eyes shimmered with shame, but he quickly masked it with a plea. "Lily, you don't understand. I did it to protect us, to keep everything together. I never meant to hurt you." She cut him off, voice rising. "Protect us? By hiding the truth? No, Dad. You're a stranger to me now. I can't pretend I didn't see this coming. I've spent years searching for answers, and all I got was more lies." Tears welled in her eyes as anger and heartbreak collided, threatening to shatter her resolve. "If you'd just told us the truth from the start, maybe things would be different. But instead you built a wall so high I had no choice but to climb over it myself." Her fists unclenched, trembling as a surge of adrenaline pushed her forward. "You always claimed to be a good man, but good men don't hide families like their secrets. They don't betray their own children." Her voice cracked, and her trembling hands reached out, grabbing the edges of the desk as if anchoring herself amid the storm of her emotions. "You've lied your whole life about everything, and now I see who you really are. I've been living a lie, too, thinking I knew my father, but all I ever knew was a facade. Well, I refuse to be part of this anymore. If I have to leave, if I have to cut you out completely, I will. But know this, your lies have cost you everything, and I won't be the one to pay the price for your deception anymore." Her voice was steady now, yet trembling with the weight of her decision. She took a step back, her eyes locked onto his in a mixture of fury, pain, and defiance. The rain persisted outside, hammering against the windows as if echoing her tumultuous heart. Her father's face crumpled, the illusion of control slipping away, revealing a vulnerability that made her stomach turn, an acknowledgement of the chaos he had wrought. In that moment, Lily realized that the confrontation was no longer about uncovering the truth, but about reclaiming her own shattered identity from the debris of lies. She turned sharply, her silhouette swallowed once more by the shadows, as she whispered to herself, "This is the end of the lie. No matter what comes next, I'll never be anyone's pawn again." Lily stood in the dim light of her prison cell, her heartbeat pounding like a relentless drum against her ribs, the weight of what she had done pressed down on her, an unbearable shroud that refused to lift. Her mind replayed the moment she found her father's body, the sickening sound of her own breath hitching as chaos erupted inside her. She had believed that ending his life was the only way to stop his lies from poisoning everyone, her family, her future, her very sense of truth. But now, in the silence that followed her confession, she felt the full force of her actions rippling through her soul. "What have I done?" she whispered, voice trembling, her tear-streaked face shadowed by the flickering fluorescent light. She remembered the night she had planned everything, the cold calculation flickering in her mind like a dark star. Her hands had trembled then, but her resolve had been firmer than steel. She had stepped into his study, her eyes blazing with a mixture of rage and heartbreak, knowing that her voice would be the last thing he ever heard. "You lied to us," she said, voice breaking, trembling with the storm inside her. "You lied about everything. About her, about us. I was just a child, trying to believe in the man I loved." Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the concrete floor, clutching her arms as if holding herself together could somehow undo the damage. The memory of his face, filled with shock, betrayal, and a strange, almost pitiful vulnerability, haunted her. She had seen beneath the mask he wore for the world, glimpsed a fragile man drowning in his own secrets, her heart clenched tight. "I thought maybe I'd feel better after it," she murmured, voice hollow and distant. "That I'd find peace, that I'd finally be free from the lies. But all I feel now is this ache, this gnawing emptiness, that won't go away." The tears spilled over, streaking her dirt-smudged cheeks as she clutched her face. Outside the small barred window, the rain continued to fall, relentless and cold. Echoing her own sense of despair, she looked down at her trembling hands, the very instruments of her destruction, and whispered, "Did I do it to protect us? Or because I couldn't bear living in his world anymore?" The question lingered, unanswered, as her mind spiraled into dark waters of regret. She remembered her last words to him, her trembling voice, her trembling heart. "This is the end of the lie. No matter what comes next, I'll never be anyone's pawn again." And yet, lying here in the shadowed silence of her cell, she wondered if redemption was even possible after such a crime. Her own tears blurred her blurry reflection in the cold metal mirror bolted to the wall, a distorted image of a girl who had crossed a line from which there was no return. Every fiber of her being screamed with remorse. Yet a flicker of defiance still burned deep within, an ember refusing to be entirely extinguished. She clenched her fists, her trembling fingers gripping the rough fabric of her prison uniform, and whispered into the darkness, "I did what I thought I had to. I hope someday I'll understand why." In the dim, flickering light of the prison visiting room, Lily sat rigid, her hands trembling, as she clutched the worn edges of the affidavit she had finally penned. The heavy steel door clanged open, and her mother entered hesitant, eyes swollen and red, her movements cautious like a wounded animal. Lily's heart hammered in her chest as their eyes met, an unspoken storm of pain, regret, and longing swirling between them. Her mother's voice quivered as she approached. "Lily, I'm so sorry I kept it all hidden. I thought I was shielding you from the worst, but I see now I only pushed you deeper into darkness." Lily's voice cracked as she responded, "I needed to know the truth, even if it shattered me. I thought I was doing what was right, protecting our family's integrity, even if it meant ending his lies. But now, I wonder if I was just trying to justify my own rage." She paused, her gaze dropping to her trembling hands, then looked up, eyes burning with a mix of defiance and despair. "When I found out about his other family, everything inside me broke. I felt like I was drowning, like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. And the more I learned, the more I hated him. Hated myself for loving someone who could deceive us so completely. That night, I remember standing over him, my heart pounding like a drum, my mind spinning with all the pain he inflicted. Betrayal, abandonment, the lies he told to everyone, including me. I thought, if I don't stop him now, who will? And in that moment, all my bottled-up fury exploded. I grabbed the heavy ornament off the mantel, my hands trembling so badly I thought I'd drop it, and I struck him. Not because I wanted to kill him, but because I believed it was the only way to end the nightmare, to prevent him from destroying what little family I had left. Her voice faltered, tears spilling down her cheeks as she looked away, ashamed. I didn't mean to cross that line, but I did, and I paid the price, locked away with my guilt and regret. Yet, in that cell, I realized something more terrifying than what I did. I realized I'd lost a part of myself that night, that I'd become someone I no longer recognized. I thought I was protecting us, but I was just trying to make sense of my rage, my heartbreak. When I finally confronted my mother, I told her, I hope someday you can forgive me, not for what I did, but for the person I became. I am still trying to find the girl I was before all this happened, the girl who believed in truth and love, not revenge and shadows. Her trembling hand reached out and she whispered, We are both broken, Lily, but maybe, just maybe, healing starts with telling the truth, no matter how ugly it is. The words hung heavy between them, fragile yet powerful. As Lily's mind drifted back to that night, her trembling hand clutching the cold ornament, her screams echoing in her mind, and the hollow victory of silence that followed, she wondered if she would ever truly forgive herself, if she could ever undo the darkness she'd unleashed, or if she was destined to carry this burden for the rest of her life. But in that moment, she decided there was one thing she could do, face whatever came next with honesty, no matter how bitter or painful, because only the truth could set her free. Lily sat alone in the dimly lit room, the faint hum of the prison's distant machinery echoing through the concrete walls. Her hands trembled as she clutched the worn, faded photograph of her father, the edges frayed from years of handling. The weight of her confession pressed heavily on her chest, each breath shallow and ragged. She had carried this pain for so long, haunted by the darkness she had unleashed, yet haunted equally by the love she still harbored for the man who had betrayed her. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of fury and sorrow as she remembered that fateful night, the chaos of her trembling fingers closing around the knife, her voice rasping out. It had to be him or us. Her mind replayed her father's last words, a mixture of anger and regret, as he whispered, You don't understand yet, Lily. There are things worth protecting, even if it means falling into darkness. Tears welled up as she thought of her mother's face, twisted with shame and grief, her trembling voice over the phone, pleading for her to run, to hide. Lily's heart clenched as she recalled her own trembling hands, the sickening reality of what she had done sinking in deeper. With each passing second, she remembered the cold night, the scent of blood thick in the air, the moment she realized her act wasn't justice, but a desperate act of love and rage intertwined. I never wanted to become this, she whispered aloud, her voice cracking under the weight of years of silence. Her mind flickered with memories of childhood, the innocence lost amid betrayal, the dreams shattered like fragile glass. And yet, amidst the storm of guilt, a spark of resolve burned fiercely within her. She reached into her pocket, clutching the small locket her father had given her years ago, the one she'd always carry as a reminder of the man she once believed in. I need to tell the truth now, she murmured, voice trembling but steady. no matter what happens next. As she slowly rose from the cot, her eyes fixed on the barred window, where a faint streak of dawn threatened to break through darkness, she realized that her journey toward redemption, however uncertain, had only just begun. The past might have sealed her fate, but the future was hers to shape, painful, uncertain, yet undeniably real. With a trembling breath, she stepped into the cold corridor, determined to face the world beyond these walls, bearing the scars of her choices, but also the faint hope that someday, somewhere, forgiveness might find her. Lily stood alone in the dimly lit visitation room, the cold steel of the table beneath her fingertips, as her eyes fixed on the visitor across from her. Her mother, whose face was swollen and pale, yet still edged with the remnants of a fierce love that had once bound them tightly. The air was thick with unspoken truths. Every breath felt heavy, weighed down by years of silence and betrayal. Her mother's trembling hands reached across the barrier, clutching Lily's own as if to anchor her to reality. "It's not what you think," her mother whispered, voice cracking like fractured glass. "Your father. He wasn't perfect, but he loved us, both of us. He was scared, Lily, scared of losing everything, of losing you, of losing himself." Lily's gaze flickered with a storm of conflicting emotions, rage, despair, and a gnawing ache of grief. "You knew," she began, voice trembling but fierce. "And you never told me. All these years I thought I knew him. I thought I understood what family meant. Turns out I was living a lie." Her mother's eyes shimmered with tears, and she lowered her voice to a whisper. "I'm sorry I kept it hidden. I wanted to protect you, protect us from the shame, from the pain, but I see now that the truth only destroys what's left of us." Lily's breath hitched, her mind flooded with images of her father, the man who had once been her hero, now reduced to a stranger hiding behind lies. Her fists clenched the edges of the table as flashes of that night replayed in her mind. The chaos, the fury, the moment when instinct and darkness collided. She remembered the sound of her father's voice, pleading, desperate, before everything spiraled beyond control. "I didn't mean to," she finally managed, voice raw with a mixture of sorrow and fury. "No, I didn't want it to happen like that. But I couldn't bear the thought of him hurting them. His other family, his children, my half-brothers and sisters who never even knew I existed. I saw what he did, what he hid, and Her voice trembled. I just snapped. It was like I was drowning in a wave of betrayal, and I couldn't breathe anymore. Her fingers tightened into fists, trembling with the enormity of her confession. "I killed him. Yes, because I thought I was saving everyone. Saving myself from a life built on lies that would crush us all eventually. I thought I was doing what was right." Her words hung in the air, heavy with pain and a desperate plea for understanding. The room seemed to shrink around her, the silence broken only by her shallow breathing. Her mother's face crumpled, tears spilling over as she whispered, "Oh, Lily, what have you done?" Lily looked away, tears blurring her vision, yet her voice stayed steady, unwavering. "I had to. He was going to destroy everything. Our family, their family, me. And I couldn't let that happen." She paused, trembling as she clenched her jaw, knowing that her truth would forever mark her, that the shadows of that night would follow her into whatever future lay ahead. As the cold metal barrier between them seemed to shrink into insignificance, Lily finally whispered. I needed to tell you this now, to carry the weight of it, to understand that love and betrayal are tangled beyond recognition. Maybe someday I'll find forgiveness, but for now, I just needed you to know the truth, raw and unfiltered, as brutal as it is. Her voice broke, but her resolve remained. The past was her prison, but perhaps in this confession lay the first step toward liberation, however painful it might be. The dim glow of the prison corridor seeped through barred windows, casting long, somber shadows on the cold concrete walls as Lily sat on the visitor's bench, her trembling hands clutching a worn photograph of her father. It was her first time back since she'd confessed everything. Since she'd finally spoken the unbearable truth that had haunted her every waking moment. The steel door creaked open, and her mother's face appeared, etched with lines of worry and exhaustion, eyes swollen from tears. Lily looked away briefly, feeling the weight of her confession settle deeper into her bones. But when her mother finally sat beside her, the silence stretched painfully. "He was my father," Lily whispered, voice hoarse, the words tasting like bitter ash. "And I loved him, even after I found out he lied to us for so many years. But I couldn't let him destroy what little family I had left. When I saw the email, the photos, I felt like my world shattered into pieces. I remember the moment clear, his eyes, that fleeting flicker of regret. Or was it fear, before I lost control? I didn't think. I just acted. My hands, they're stained, and I'll carry that forever. I've accepted that I took a life, and I'm not here to pretend it was justified. But beneath all that rage and heartbreak, I see a man who betrayed us in the cruelest way imaginable. I never wanted to be like him, yet somehow I became the monster in my own story. After all this time, I realized that vengeance only deepens the wound. I thought I could bury the truth, hide behind silence, and maybe that would have been easier. But the guilt clawed at me from the inside, relentless and unforgiving. So I told the world. I told myself. I needed to confront my demons, to understand that love and betrayal are tangled in the darkest ways. Now I sit here, broken and exhausted, knowing that I've paid a heavy price. My freedom, my innocence, maybe even my soul. But I also know that someday, forgiveness might find its way into my heart, not as absolution, but as a fragile hope that I can somehow mend what's left of me. Maybe, in the end, this pain is the only way I can truly heal, even if it costs everything I've ever held dear. The cold, gray light seeped through the narrow window of the prison cell, casting long shadows across the battered walls as Lily sat silently on the edge of her cot, her hands trembling with a mixture of resolve and despair. Her eyes, once vibrant, with youthful innocence, now bore the heavy weight of 1,000 unspoken truths, reflecting the storm of emotions that churned within her. Grief, guilt, anger, and a faint flicker of hope. She clutched a crumpled photograph tucked into her palms, a faded image of her father smiling carefree, unaware of the darkness that had swallowed his life. The echo of footsteps approached, a guard's slow, deliberate stride, before the cold metal door swung open with a screech, revealing the warden. He glanced at her with weary eyes, sagging only slightly under the burden of his own morality. "Lily," he said softly, voice edged with reluctant compassion. "You have a visitor." Her breath hitched as her heart skipped a beat, knowing exactly who it was before she even stood. She straightened her shoulders, wiped the tears that threatened to spill, and stepped into the dusty corridor, her heels clicking softly against the concrete. The visitor was waiting in the visitation room. Her mother, Elizabeth, a woman whose face was carved by years of silent suffering and regret. Elizabeth's eyes searched hers desperately, trembling lips parting as if to speak. But instead, words dissolved into heavy silence. Lily approached, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I didn't think I'd see you here." Elizabeth's hands trembled as she reached out, trembling fingers brushing Lily's cheek. "I never stopped loving you, even when I wanted to." "Turn away," she choked out, tears pooling in her eyes. Lily's voice cracked as she responded. "I needed to understand why he did it, how he could hide everything for so long. I thought I was fighting for justice, for the truth. But now I see it's all tangled. Love, betrayal, guilt." Her mother nodded slowly, her gaze moist. "He was a man full of secrets, Lily. But you have to remember, we are not just victims of his sins. We are survivors." Lily's fists clenched, her voice trembling as she fought the rising tide of emotion. "I killed him because I couldn't bear the lies anymore. I thought that if I took away his lies, I'd free myself too. But I realize now, revenge only deepened the wound. I thought I could bury everything, hide behind silence, but it's eaten me alive. I've paid so much, my freedom, my innocence, but the worst part is the guilt. It's haunting me, like a ghost I can't escape." Tears streamed down her face as she looked at her mother, who finally stepped forward, pulling her into a trembling embrace. "We'll find a way through this," Elizabeth whispered fiercely. "We're broken, but not beyond repair. You're not alone anymore." In that moment, amidst the sterile, cold walls of confinement, a fragile thread of understanding and reconciliation formed, fragile yet persistent, an unspoken promise that someday, perhaps, they would heal from the wounds inflicted by a man whose betrayal had shattered their entire world, leaving behind only fragments they could strive to piece together, no matter how long the journey. The cold gray light of dawn seeped through the cracked window of the small, sterile visiting room as Lily sat trembling, clutching her trembling hands tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the scuffed table before her. For months she had carried the weight of her secret, a dark, unbearable truth that had hollowed her out from within. Yet now, standing face to face with her mother, she felt the floodgates opening in a torrent of raw emotion. Elizabeth's eyes were rimmed red, her voice trembling as she reached across the too thin barrier, her hand trembling as she gently touched Lily's, whispering, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Lily's breath hitched, her throat constricting as she fought to hold back the tears threatening to spill over. "I had to do it," she finally choked out, voice barely audible, eyes brimming with anguish and shame. "He never stopped lying to us. All those years, pretending everything was perfect, while behind closed doors, he was hiding another family, another life. I couldn't bear it anymore. I thought if he was gone, the lies would die with him, and maybe I'd find peace." Her voice cracked under the weight of her confession, her words racing in a frantic rush of grief and defiance. Elizabeth's face crumpled, a mixture of heartbreak and understanding, and she reached out, pulling Lily into her arms, pressing her trembling body against her own. The embrace was hollow, trembling, heavy with unspoken pain. Yet within that fragile connection, a flicker of something deeper sparked, remorse, love, and a shared scar of betrayal that neither could mend in a day. Lily closed her eyes, feeling Elizabeth's warm tears fall onto her hair as she whispered softly, "We're broken, yes, but maybe, just maybe, we can begin to piece ourselves back together, one shattered fragment at a time. Because even in the darkness, I promise you, there's a sliver of light waiting to be found, if we're willing to face the truth and forgive ourselves first." As the distant chime of the prison bell echoed through the silent room, Lily realized her confession had carved open a raw wound, yet it also ignited a fragile hope, a chance to confront the depths of her pain, accept her own darkness, and begin the arduous path toward healing, no matter how long it took, to forgive herself and the man she had once loved without question. In the dim haze of her prison cell, Lily sat frozen, her trembling hands clutching the cold steel bars, as if they could somehow anchor her to a reality she desperately wished to escape. The faint, rhythmic sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, a relentless reminder of the world she had left behind, a world that her choices had irrevocably altered. The night was thick with silence, punctuated only by her shallow breaths and the distant murmur of guards. Her mind replayed the moment she crossed the boundary from innocence to violence, the way her father's face twisted in shock, the brief flicker of rage that had consumed her in that fleeting second. Why did it have to come to this? She whispered aloud, voice trembling with the weight of her guilt. Tears welled up, hot and bitter, as flashes of her father's warm smile, once so familiar, faded into a ghostly image that haunted her every thought. Suddenly, her cell door creaked open, and a soft voice broke through her reverie. Faint, hesitant, yet unmistakably real. "Lily, can I come in?" It was Elizabeth, her mother's voice, fragile yet tinged with an almost desperate tenderness that she hadn't heard in years. Lily's heart clenched painfully. Her soul was torn between the instinct to shut her out and the unspoken need for connection. She nodded faintly, her throat tight, unable to trust her voice. Elizabeth stepped inside, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, and sat quietly beside her daughter, their shoulders almost touching in shared silence. For a long moment neither spoke, each aware of the enormity of the truth they both carried. Truths that had been buried beneath layers of betrayal, shame, and silence. Elizabeth finally broke the silence, her voice trembling as she reached out and gently grasped Lily's trembling hand. "I knew about the other family," she whispered, voice thick with pain. "I've known for years, but I didn't know how to tell you. How to face it myself. I thought if I ignored it, maybe it would go away. But it didn't. And I see now that hiding only made everything worse." Tears spilled from Lily's eyes, unbidden, as she looked at her mother, searching her face for answers she already feared. "Did you ever love him?" she choked out, voice cracking under the weight of her heartbreak. Elizabeth's eyes shimmered with grief, and she nodded slowly. "I loved him once, but what I loved was the man I thought I knew. Before the lies, before the secrets. And I see now that love can be a double-edged sword. It can keep us afloat or drag us under if we're not careful." Lily's voice broke as she whispered, "I felt like I lost everything. My family, my innocence, my future. And I didn't see any way out but to make it stop." Elizabeth's eyes softened, tears streaking her face. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, reaching for her daughter's trembling shoulders. "But I understand why you did. We were both trapped in a web of our own making, and it's torn us apart. I wish I could take it all back, but the past is a part of us now. What matters is what we do with what's left." Lily looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever forgive him, or myself." Her words hung, heavy between them, a fragile admission of her fractured soul. Elizabeth took Lily's hand, squeezing it gently. "Forgiveness isn't instant," she murmured. "It's a journey, one step at a time. Maybe someday we can find a way to heal, but today we just have to face the darkness together, because even in the deepest shadows, there's a faint glimmer of hope if we're willing to see it." As the night stretched on, their shared silence became a silent vow. They would confront their pain, their secrets, and their brokenness, not with shame, but with the hope of eventual redemption. And in that quiet, fragile moment, Lily realized that her greatest fight was not only with her past, but with her own capacity to forgive, herself and the man she had loved, no matter how much it scarred her soul. In the dim glow of dawn filtering, through the cracked blinds, Lily sat alone in the cold, silent kitchen, her trembling hands clutching a faded photograph of her father. Smiling, carefree, unaware of the darkness that had consumed her, her mind replayed the night her life shattered into pieces, the night she had made the choice no one should ever face. The echo of her own voice haunted her. I had no choice. It was him or me. Her eyes reddened from tears and sleepless despair, darted toward the door as she heard footsteps approaching softly, familiar yet distant. It was her mother, Elizabeth, her face etched with lines of worry and regret. She hesitated before sitting down across Lily, her voice trembling as she broke the heavy silence. "Sweetheart, I know you're hurting. But you must understand, your father's secrets ran deeper than anyone knew. We all carried shadows, but you—" Elizabeth paused, voice choked with emotion. "You didn't deserve this pain." Lily looked away, clutching her knees tightly as her voice cracked. "He lied to us. All these years, pretending to be someone he wasn't, and I couldn't live with it anymore." Her words spilled out in a rush, raw and unfiltered, as tears streamed down her cheeks. She clenched her fists, trying to hold back the flood of memories, the warmth of her father's hand, the laughter they used to share, now poisoned by betrayal. Outside, the early morning light cast a pallid glow over the decaying backyard, where a lone bird sang, a fragile melody amid the chaos of her thoughts. Lily's voice quivered as she looked back at her mother, eyes burning with a mixture of wrath and sorrow. "I thought I knew him, but I was just fooling myself. I wanted to believe the man I loved was perfect. Instead, I found out he was a stranger, someone I had to stop." Elizabeth reached out, trembling, her fingers brushing Lily's trembling hand. It was never easy for him, facing his own sins, his past. But killing him? Lily, that's not justice. That's darkness you can't undo. Lily's gaze flickered with a flicker of defiance. Yet beneath it, her heart was a battlefield of guilt and relief, desperate to justify what she'd done. She swallowed hard, voice barely above a whisper. "I did it because I thought it was the only way. I thought if I took away the lie, maybe I could finally be free. Free from his control, from his secrets, from myself." Her words drifted into the silence, broken only by the distant chirping of the bird. As if nature echoed her unspoken agony, the weight of her confession pressed heavily on her shoulders, each breath a reminder of the irreversible act that had forever altered her life. As Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears, she leaned forward, voice trembling with a mixture of pain and understanding. "You're my girl, Lily. No matter what you've done, I'll stand by you. But you have to face the truth. What you did might never leave you. And someday, you'll have to decide if you can live with that." Lily looked down, clutching the photograph closer, feeling the cold reality seep deep into her bones. Her life forever divided into before and after that night. Outside, the sun continued to rise, casting long shadows over a girl who had crossed a line no one should ever cross, yet still searching for a way to reconcile her fractured soul amidst the ruins of her innocence. The prison gates echoed shut behind Lily as she was led into the cold, sterile visiting room, the dim fluorescent lights flickering overhead like dying stars. Her heart hammered in her chest, each beat a thunderclap of regret and resolve. She hadn't spoken a word since her release, but inside her mind replayed every moment of that fateful night. The chaos, the piercing silence after the gunshot, her father's fallen figure sprawling across the marble floor, the blood pooling like a dark, viscous mirror of her shattered soul. Now, as she sat across the table from Elizabeth, her mother, her eyes flickered with a turbulent storm of guilt and defiance. Elizabeth's trembling hands reached out, trembling as they brushed Lily's trembling fingers. "You're here, sweetheart," Elizabeth whispered, voice thick with tears and exhaustion. "I've waited so long to see the girl I used to know. You're safe now." Lily's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw clenched tight, as if to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill out. She looked away briefly, eyes fixating on a crack in the concrete wall. But then she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her confession settle on her shoulders once again. She knew she had carried her secret like a shard of glass lodged deep into her chest, but hearing her mother's voice, soft, broken, yet resilient, made her realize how far she'd come. Yet beneath her skin, a primal urge gnawed at her, a need to unburden herself, to finally admit the truth that had been chained inside her for so long. Her voice was hoarse, trembling, yet resolute when she finally spoke. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to happen that way. It was like everything just exploded inside me. I saw him, and I felt so betrayed, like my world was crumbling. I didn't think. I just reacted. I thought I could protect our family from the lies, from the damage he'd done. But now I see it's not that simple." Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision as she fought to keep her composure. Elizabeth's face crumpled, a mixture of heartbreak and pride fighting for dominance, and she reached out again, this time clasping Lily's hands with trembling fingers. "You did what you thought was right, and I can't pretend I understand everything. But I know one thing. Nothing will undo what's happened. You lost a part of yourself that night, Lily. But you also found the truth. And that's the first step toward healing." Lily nodded slowly, feeling the cold truth seep into her bones. She had crossed a line no one should ever cross. Yet somehow, this act of darkness had illuminated the buried pain hiding beneath her grief. As the room grew silent, save for the distant hum of the prison's machinery, Lily finally allowed herself to breathe, knowing that her confession, raw and unfiltered, was a fragile seed of redemption. Her gaze drifted toward the small window, where a flicker of sunlight pierced through the barred glass, casting a faint glow on her trembling hands, and a future she was still uncertain she could face. But for the first time in a long, dark while, she felt the faint whisper of hope. Perhaps in confronting her deepest shame, she could find a way to forgive herself, piece by fragile piece. In the dim, flickering light of her prison cell, Lily sat rigid on the narrow cot, her hands trembling as she clutched a battered photo of her father, a fragment of the life she had taken and the truth she had swallowed. The weight of her confession pressed heavily on her chest, each breath shallow and strained. She knew this moment hadn't come easily. Her mind replayed the chaos of that night, the piercing scream, the rush of adrenaline, and the cold realization that her act was irreversible. Her eyes wandered to the scarred wall opposite where she'd carved the initials of her mother and the ghost of her father, a silent testament to her fractured world. The door creaked open softly, and a guard entered, his face a mask of cautious curiosity. "Lily, you have a visitor," he announced, quietly, stepping aside to reveal her mother, Sarah, whose face was ravaged by exhaustion and grief. Lily's heart clenched. As her mother approached, her voice breaking, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I never wanted it to be like this." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she reached out, trembling fingers brushing Lily's cheek. "You did what you thought was right," she breathed, voice cracking. "You thought you were protecting us, even if it cost you everything." Lily looked away, staring at the cold concrete floor as her mother knelt beside her, clutching her hands tightly. "You always believed in justice," Lily interrupted, voice hoarse. "But I realized justice doesn't always come with a clean ending. I thought killing him would set us free from his lies, that it would finally give my family some peace. But all it did was shatter what little I had left, my innocence, my future, my soul." Her mother's eyes brimmed, with tears, her voice trembling. "And now, what do you see when you look in the mirror, Lily? Do you feel redeemed or just hollow?" Lily swallowed hard, feeling a strange mix of relief and despair. "I don't know if I'll ever feel whole again," she admitted softly. "All I want is to understand, to forgive myself someday. But for now, all I have are these broken pieces of my father, of my life, of myself." As her mother gently pressed her forehead against Lily's, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken pain and tentative hope. Outside, the sun finally broke through the barred window, casting a faint glow across the cell, illuminating the small battered mirror hanging on the wall. Lily looked at her reflection, at the girl who had once believed in righteousness, now scarred by truth and loss. She whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something new, something I have to learn to live with." As her tears finally spilled over, mingling with the faint promise of dawn. The heavy silence in the dimly lit room was broken only by the faint hum of the fluorescent light flickering overhead, casting jagged shadows across the peeling wallpaper and the cluttered desk strewn with old photographs and crumpled papers. Lily sat on the edge of the battered wooden chair, her fists clenched tightly on her lap, eyes fixed on the cracked mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Her breath hitched as she watched her reflection, pale, tired, yet carrying an unspoken storm beneath. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like a stone, her mind replaying the moment she took her father's life, the shock still vivid, as if it were etched into her skin. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by footsteps approaching. The prison guard, his face serious, paused at the door before entering. "Lily, your visitor's here," he announced softly, voice low and respectful. She nodded stiffly, rising slowly, her legs trembling slightly. As she moved toward the door, her mind was a whirlwind of memories. The warm smile of her father, the laughter they shared during fleeting moments, now forever stained by betrayal's dark shadow. She hesitated, hand on the cold metal handle, then took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. The visitor stepped inside, a woman whose face was marked with lines of regret and sorrow, her eyes shining with a fragile hope. Lily's mother. The woman looked away for a moment, then reached out with trembling hands, gripping Lily's shoulders. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "I should have told you everything. I should have protected you from the lies." Lily's breath hitched again, her heart pounding in her chest. "You should have," she replied softly, voice cracking. "But now, it's too late for apologies. I know the truth, and I paid for it in blood." Her words hung heavy in the air. Her mother's face crumpled, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. Lily felt a strange mixture of anger and exhaustion as she looked into her mother's trembling eyes. "I killed him," she finally admitted, voice trembling but resolute. "Because I couldn't live with the lies anymore. Because I thought that if I took away the betrayal, maybe, just maybe, I could find some peace." Her mother reached out, her hands trembling, desperate to touch her daughter. But Lily stepped back, her expression haunted. "Don't come closer," she whispered fiercely. "You never understood what it was like, living in the shadow of a man who was a stranger to me. I thought I was protecting my little brothers, my sisters, those innocent lives he hid behind, his lies. But I was wrong. I became what I hated most. And now, I carry this secret, this guilt, every single day." Tears spilled over her cheeks, shining in the faint light as she closed her eyes, trembling under the weight of her confession. The prison cell suddenly felt colder, emptier, as if the walls absorbed her pain. Her voice softened to a whisper. "I thought killing him would end everything. The pain, the confusion. But instead it's just the beginning of something darker, something I don't know if I can survive. I thought I'd feel free, but all I feel is hollow." Her mother reached out again, this time hesitantly. But Lily stepped back, her face a mask of resolve and despair. "Whatever happens now," Lily whispered, "I've chosen my truth. I've faced it. And maybe someday I'll find forgiveness. Not from him, but from myself." Her voice broke as the weight of her actions finally settled deep into her bones, her shoulders sagging under the burden of a love betrayed and the darkness she had unleashed in a desperate attempt to protect those she loved. Lily sat alone on the cold concrete floor of her prison cell, the faint hum of distant voices and the metallic clangs echoing through the shadows. Her hands trembled as she clutched the small, battered locket she had kept since her childhood, a fragment of her fractured past. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast a sickly orange glow through the barred window, its light flickering, like a dying ember. Her mind replayed that night in a haze of raw emotion, the sudden, blinding rage that overtook her when her father's voice, thick with lies and cowardice, had silenced her final plea. She remembered the way her heartbeat thundered in her ears, the brutal strike, and then the suffocating silence afterward. Tears welled again, blurring her vision as she whispered into the emptiness. "I didn't want to kill him, but I saw no way out, no way to stop the chaos he'd unleashed." Her voice cracked, trembling between anguish and guilt as she slowly traced her fingers over the cold metal of the locket. He was my father, my hero. But beneath that charm was a man who hid so much, who betrayed us all. I thought I was doing what was right, protecting those innocent children he abandoned, preventing his lies from destroying everything. Still, now I wonder if I was just fooling myself, if justice was ever mine to dispense. She pressed her forehead against the wall, voice barely audible. They say I'm a monster. I look in the mirror, and I see someone I don't recognize, someone I hate, someone I pity. I thought maybe if I took away the pain of his secrets, I'd find peace. But all I feel is this gnawing emptiness. Every day I grapple with whether I was right or wrong, whether I'm a murderer or a protector. No matter how many times I tell myself I did it for love, for justice, the guilt frames my reflection with cruel, unforgiving lines. I thought that once I'd confessed, it would set me free, release the weight of my secret, give me a chance to rebuild what I'd broken. But instead, it's like tearing apart a scarred, ragged wound that never quite healed. I begged for forgiveness, in my own way, not from him, but from myself. Because I know I crossed a line I can never uncross. I look into the mirror of my soul and see the fractured mirror of my family, shattered beyond repair, each piece reflecting a fragment of truth, betrayal, and regret. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever find a way to forgive the girl I was that night, the one who thought revenge would bring closure. Maybe someday I'll understand that justice isn't about punishment alone, but about accepting what we cannot change and learning to live with the shadows we carry. Until then, I'll keep searching for that fragile redemption, hoping it exists somewhere beyond the darkness that still haunts my every step. The gray morning light seeped through the small, battered window of the prison cell, casting long, jagged shadows across Lily's trembling hands as she sat on the edge of her narrow cot. Her skin felt clammy, her heart pounding like a distant drum, echoing the chaos that had become her mind since the day she'd finally uttered the truth. Her confession ringing out like a shattered bell in the silent, oppressive air. She remembered the moment clearly, the cold, unfeeling courtroom, the way her voice had cracked as she told the judge everything, the night she had snapped, driven by a storm of betrayal and grief. It wasn't supposed to go like that, she whispered aloud, voice hoarse with the weight of years. Her eyes flicked to the battered mirror hanging crooked on the wall, and for a moment she saw her reflection, pale, hollow, eyes dark with exhaustion and regret. She knew the face staring back wasn't entirely her anymore. It was a stranger forged in the fires of anger, loss, and desperation. Her fingers traced the scar on her palm, a silent reminder of that night. A night when she'd crossed a line, so deep that time would never fully heal it. She remembered the fight with her father, the way he'd looked at her with that mixture of love and condescension, as if she were just another mistake, another secret to bury. Her voice had trembled as she confronted him, demanding answers, her words sharp and furious, until the silence was shattered by the sound of her own trembling hands gripping a heavy object she never thought she'd use. "You lied to me," she'd whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "You betrayed us all." The moment had spiraled into chaos, her rage exploding in a flash of violence, her father's cry of shock turning into a gurgle as she pressed the cold metal against his chest, the world around her collapsing into chaos and darkness. The memory was seared into her mind, vivid and raw. Her father's eyes wide with betrayal, his voice faltering as he begged her to stop, to understand. But she couldn't. Her eyes welled with tears. Yet she felt strangely numb, detached from the life she had taken. Now, sitting alone in her cell, Lily clutched her knees to her chest, feeling the ache of remorse ripple through her like a tsunami. The confession had set her free in one way, but chained her in another, an endless loop of guilt and sorrow. She had thought justice lay in her hands, but the heavy silence of her cell told her otherwise. Justice was a ghost she'd chased into the darkness, and redemption was a distant hope flickering beyond the prison walls. Her mind drifted back to her mother's tear-streaked face during their last visit, her trembling voice whispering, "I wish I could have protected you, Lily." And yet, she knew she couldn't undo what she'd done, couldn't turn back time and erase the night that shattered everything they'd ever known. As the cold dawn broke through the bars, Lily whispered her final plea into the emptiness, eyes fixed on the distant horizon, the faint promise of forgiveness, the faint hope of healing, lingering somewhere beyond her reach, just out of sight, like a fragile dawn waiting to break through the darkness she had become. Lily sat alone in the cold, dimly lit visiting room, the faint hum of fluorescent lights blending into the distant echoes of barred doors closing behind her. Her hands trembled, palms sweaty against the rough surface of the table, as she stared at the photograph she clutched tightly, her father's face, smiling in happier days, now a ghost haunting her every thought. Her eyes flicked to the cracked window, where a dull gray sky cast shadows that danced like ghosts across the peeling walls. The weight of her confession still pressed heavily on her chest, but tonight, a different kind of torment gnawed at her, the questions she had buried deep, the memories she refused to face, as she watched her mother's trembling voice replayed in her mind. "I wish I could have protected you, Lily." She felt a surge of conflicting emotions, anger, grief, and a faint flicker of remorse tangled inside her, making her stomach churn. It was then that the door cracked open, and her mother hesitated in the doorway, a fragile figure trembling with helplessness and love. Lily's voice barely escaped her lips, raw and trembling. "Mom, I never wanted to hurt him. But I couldn't bear the lies anymore. It was like drowning in darkness, waiting for the truth to swallow me whole." Her mother stepped forward, tears shimmering in her eyes as she reached across the table, grasping Lily's trembling hand, warm, fragile, a mirror of her own shattered heart. "You did what you thought was right, honey," she whispered, voice breaking. "But I wonder if that's enough. That justice, that revenge, will it ever give us peace?" Lily's gaze dropped to the worn surface, her voice faltering. "I thought I was saving them, saving us from the lies, from the pain. But now I see only destruction. I wonder if there's any way to undo what's been done, if I can ever forgive myself for what I've lost." Outside, a solitary crow cawed, breaking the suffocating silence, as if mocking the futile hope that light might someday pierce the endless darkness that had become her life. She inhaled sharply, feeling the sting of tears again, knowing that her story, her truth, was now out in the open, forever etched into her soul. The past hovered like an unshakable shadow, whispering questions she dared not answer, yet couldn't escape. She had stepped into the light of confession, but the road to forgiveness remained a distant, flickering hope she could only chase in her dreams, an elusive dawn just beyond her reach. In the dim, flickering light of the prison visiting room, Lily sat rigidly across from her mother, her hands trembling as she clutched a crumpled photograph, a snapshot of her father, smiling broadly, unaware of the storm that had ultimately consumed him. The air was thick with unspoken truths, and every breath she took felt weighted with the ghost of the man she had killed, the man whose betrayal had shattered her innocence. Her mother's eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, flickered with a mixture of regret and helplessness as she reached out, voice barely above a whisper. "Lily, I never wanted this for you. For us. Your father was a complicated man, full of secrets he couldn't bear to face. But I swear, I never imagined it would come to this." Lily's throat tightened, her voice caught in a choked, ragged whisper. "You knew he was hiding someone, right? All those years, all those lies. I should have seen it." Her mother nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He was good with words, but he was also good at hiding what mattered. Most. I thought I could shield you from the truth, keep you safe in the illusion of our perfect family. But I was wrong. The pain of knowing. I should have told you sooner. Maybe then, you wouldn't have felt so alone." Lily's eyes darkened, and she looked away, fighting the surge of anger and grief that threatened to overwhelm her. "It was his lies that broke me," she whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of betrayal and despair. "When I found out about her, I saw the life he'd built with her, the family he kept secret, and I realized that everything I believed in, everything I was told, was just a lie. I thought I was protecting the truth, protecting the remnants of my family, but I was only fooling myself." Her mother reached across the table, her hand trembling as she gently touched Lily's. "You were brave, even when you didn't realize it. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that define us. Your father's betrayal was a wound that ran too deep. But you're stronger than you know. I see that now. And I want you to understand, I never blamed you for what happened. You're still my girl, our girl. I just wish I'd been brave enough to tell you everything sooner, to spare you some of this pain." Lily's breath hitched, her mind swirling with memories. Warm summer days in the yard, her father's laughter echoing in her ears, now tainted by the harsh reality of his duplicity. Her eyes darted to the small window, where the barred sunlight cast long, jagged shadows across her troubled face. "I killed him," she finally whispered, voice cracking and raw with truth. "Not because I wanted to, but because I thought it was the only way to stop the chaos he'd created, to keep his secrets from destroying everything I loved. I didn't mean to. God, I didn't mean to. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let him keep hurting us, hiding everything." Her mother's face crumpled, and she reached out, clutching Lily's hands tightly, trembling as much as her daughter's. "My sweet girl," she said softly, voice thick with sorrow and helplessness. "Sometimes love and justice clash in the most devastating ways. I don't know if what you did was right or wrong anymore. All I know is you're alive, and that's what matters now. We can't undo what's happened, but we can try to find a way to heal, together." Lily looked down at their intertwined hands, tears streaming freely now, as the weight of her choices pressed down on her chest. For a fleeting moment she wondered if forgiveness, hers and his, was even possible after everything, or if she was doomed to carry this scar forever, a permanent reminder of the darkness that had once consumed her soul. Outside, the distant cry of a crow echoed through the cold gray sky, a haunting reminder that some wounds, no matter how deep, never truly